Good morning, folks. Good morning. Awaken, brothers and sisters in Israel. There's one thing I love about this channel is I'm not going to run out of material. And it's really easy for me to just pick up and read the Bible to you. As a matter of fact, that's probably more important than giving you my opinion. I think what's written here in the Bible is more important than my opinion. How about you? Please join me on that one. Oh Lord, Yahweh, Creator, Father, you know what's in a man's heart more than I do. I can never know it. I can never fathom it. There's so much there, but you know what a person needs to hear. So help me this morning. Help me that I might actually tell this person out there what they need to hear. Whatever message it is that you need delivered to them, let me do that, Lord. Grace me. Give me the insight that I might be able to see through and give this person, give these people the message that you want me to deliver for you. Thank you for the opportunity to witness what I'm about to see, to discover what I'm about to discover, to watch this person in front of me as he actually changes. He gets his own power. He gets to not just walk away from me, but run away, free and independent, able to make better decisions, able to live according to your will. Amen. We're continuing with Samson, Judges chapter 14. Now, I skipped over something here a little bit earlier, and we know that it's important when things pop up, and I'm going to go right back to Judges 12, and Jephthah judged Israel for 6 years and died. And Jephthah the Gileadite was buried in one of the cities of Gilead, and after him Ibzan of Bethlehem judged Israel. And this is what I read, what I blew right on past, and I should have stopped and told you that this was an important thing to just point out. And I should mark this up. Still haven't found that multicolored pen of mine yet to sign that Bible in blue ink. Ibzan, I-B-Z-A-N, of Bethlehem judged Israel. And he had 30 sons and 30 daughters, whom he sent abroad. What does that mean? And he took in 30 daughters from abroad for his sons, and he judged Israel for 7 years. So I think that whom he sent abroad refers to his 30 daughters. And I think that he took 30 daughters from abroad in. Now, why is this important? Why does this stand out? Remember, we have what we call a dual witness in the Bible. A double witness, where it's in the Bible twice, meaning Yahshua, who I believe wrote this thing for us. Believe it or not, I think it all came through him. He was the Word. I think he wants us to pay attention to these double witness things. It's like, pay attention to this and learn this. However, remember, I said there were 2 items which were mentioned 5 times. A quintuple witness. And one of those was the relocation of the Israelites to the other side of Assyria, between the land of Assyria and the land of the Medes, as a buffer, just south of the Caucasus Mountains. And that's in there so that you and I might be able to identify ourselves and realize, yeah, we're called Caucasians. We are most likely Israelites. Good chance that we're Israelites. I'd like to say we are Israelites, but not all Caucasians became Israel. As I talk to you, I realize that, and I put that qualification on it. So I try to speak accurately and scientifically. Here, as I read this 30 daughters and 30 sons, and he takes them from abroad, who did he take them from? And is there a chance that he took daughters from the people of the land? that he gave his daughters to the people of the land. That's a possibility here. And remember, it said 5 times, do not intermarry with the Canaanites. Because remember, they've got the fallen angelic satanic seed. However, we also have another part in the Bible earlier in which Rebekah complains to her husband Isaac and says, look, one of my sons has married a Canaanite, taken a Canaanite woman to wife. He's destroyed the future. He's polluted the family for us. If my other son takes a Canaanite woman to wife, then my life will have been worthless. I will have lived for nothing. And as a result, they sent Jacob back to Laban, back to his mother's brother. And there he got his wives. So he took his wives from Laban's daughters, 2 daughters, Leah and Rachel. Leah being the oldest, Rachel being the youngest. And so we have that example as well. So what it's saying here is that he may have sent the daughters over to that land, and he may have kept everything going right. Or he might have sent his daughters into the Canaanites, and he might have taken daughters from the Canaanites for his wives, for his sons. We just don't know. But I wanted to point that out. And it's one of those things we have to be flexible about. And someday that might mean something more to us. So that is it's a Bible principle. So we're going to go back up. We went through Judges 13 last time. And Manoah and his wife, the angel of the Lord. I do not think that Manoah's wife is mentioned in here. Remember that if a woman's name is mentioned in the Bible, it's a big deal. They don't have their names mentioned very much. And remember, above all, that it's a patriarchy. It's not a matriarchy. So when you walk around and tell people that the Jews are God's chosen people, do they have a matriarchy or a patriarchy? Think about that. Okay? Apply yourself to it. Okay, Judges 14. We'll continue on, and we're early in about Samson before we covered his childhood slightly. Judges 14:1. And Samson went down to Timnath and saw a woman in Timnath of the daughters of the Philistines, daughters of the land. And he came up and told his father and mother and said, I've seen a woman in Timnath of the daughters of the Philistines. Now therefore, get her for me to wife. So parents made the arrangements and made these marriages happen. And the parents had authority over that. You women will not like that. You think you have to be able to fall in love, and your parents shouldn't have any say-so in that. You should be able to do that yourself. Man, do you screw up. If you turn to your father to help you get a proper husband, you would end up with a better man almost every time. Seriously. You would end up with a far better husband, a far better life, than doing it on your own because you're in love. It would be nice if you fell in love with the man that your father chose for you. And your father, is he going to choose something bad for you? I don't think so. I think that one of the biggest, most important things a father can do is get his daughter married off properly. That's a tall order. That's a big responsibility. That weighs on him like nothing else because he has a hard time doing that. He has a hard time giving his daughter over to another man. He doesn't want to do that. So he does a good job of it. So here's Samson telling his parents, fetch me that woman for my wife. Then his father and his mother said to him, is there not a woman among the daughters of your brethren, or among all my people, that you can go to take to wife the uncircumcised Philistines? They're not part of us. and you want to go get one of them. What's wrong with your own people? What's wrong with us? What's wrong with our brethren here? And Samson said to his father, "Get her for me, for she pleases me well." Samson's got a weakness. Strange women. But his father and his mother knew not that it was of Yahweh, that he sought an occasion against the Philistines. So Yahweh is setting this thing up. He's making this happen. For at that time the Philistines had dominion over Israel. Yahweh setting this up. Okay, then Samson went down, and his father and his mother, to Timnath, and came to the vineyards of Timnath, and behold, a young lion roared against him. And the Spirit of Yahweh came mightily upon him, and he split him as he would have split a kid. He ripped this lion apart with his bare hands. And he had nothing in his hand, but he told not his father or his mother what he had done. Private victories. He went down and talked with the woman, and she pleased Samson well. And after a time he returned to take her, and he turned aside to see the carcass of the lion. And behold, there was a swarm of bees and honey in the carcass of the lion. And he took thereof in his hands, and went on eating, and came to his father and mother, and gave them, and they did eat. But he told them not that he had taken the honey out of the carcass of the lion. So his father went down to the woman, and Samson made there a feast, such as used the young men to do. And it came to pass, when they saw him, that they brought 30 companions to be with him. Interesting, the number 30 again. And Samson said to them, "I will now put a riddle to you. If you can certainly declare it to me within the 7 days of the feast, and find it out, then I will give you 30 sheets and 30 changes of garments. But if you cannot declare it to me, then you shall give to me 30 sheets and 30 changes of garments." And they said to him, "Put forth your riddle, so that we may hear it." And he said to them, "Out of the eater came forth meat, and out of the strong came forth sweetness, and they could not in 3 days expound the riddle. And it came to pass on the 7th day that they declared to Samson's wife, "Entice your husband, that he may declare to us the riddle, lest we burn you and your father's house with fire. Have you called us to take that we have now? Is it not so?" And Samson's wife wept before him, and said, "You do but hate me, and love me not. You have put forth a riddle to the children of my people, and have not told it to me." And he said to her, "Behold, I have not told it to my father nor my mother, and shall I tell it you?" And she wept before him the 7 days, while their feast lasted. And it came to pass on the 7th day that he told her, because she put pressure on him. And she told the riddle to the children of the people. The men of the city went to him on the 7th day before the sun went down. What is sweeter than honey? What is stronger than a lion? And then said he to them, "If you had not plowed with my heifer, you had not found out my riddle." And the Spirit of Yahweh came upon him, and he went down to Ashkelon, and slew 30 men of them, and took their spoil, and gave changes of garments to them which expounded the riddle. And his anger was kindled, and he went up to his father's house. But Samson's wife was given to his companion, whom he had used as his friend. But it came to pass within a while after, in the time of wheat harvest, that Samson visited his wife with a kid, and said, "I will go in to my wife into the chamber." But her father would not permit him to go in. And her father said, "I truly thought that you had utterly hated her. Therefore I gave her to your companion. Is not her younger sister fairer than she? Take her, I pray you, instead of her. And Samson said concerning them, Now shall I be more blameless than the Philistines, though I do them a displeasure. And Samson went and caught 300 foxes, and took firebrands, and turned tail to tail, and put a firebrand in the midst between the two tails. Tied the foxes tail to tail with firebrands in between them. And when he had set the brands on fire, he let them go into the standing corn of the Philistines, and burn up both the shocks and also the standing corn, and the vineyards and the olives. Whoa. And he said to her, If they bind me fast with... my page is stuck together. I guess it shows that I haven't read this book in this particular Bible before. All right, I got it. Then the Philistines said, Who has done this? And they answered, Samson, the son-in-law of the Timnite, because he had taken his wife and given her to his companion, and the Philistines came up and burnt her and her father with fire. And Samson said to them, Though you have done this, yet will I be avenged of you, and after that I will cease. And he smote him hip and thigh with a great slaughter, and he went down and dwelt in the top of the rock Etam. And then the Philistines went up and pitched in Judah and spread themselves in Lehi. And the men of Judah said, Why have you come up against us? And they answered, To bind Samson have we come up, to do to him as he has done to us. Then 3,000 men of Judah went up to the top of the rock Etam, and said to Samson, Know you not that the Philistines are rulers over us? What is this that you have done to us? And he said to them, As they did to me, so have I done to them. And they said to him, We have come down to bind you, that we may deliver you into the hand of the Philistines. And Samson said to them, Swear to me that you will not fall upon me yourselves. And they spoke to him, saying, No, we will bind you, but we will bind you fast, and deliver you into their hand. But surely we will not kill you. And they bound him with two new cords, and brought him up from the rock. And when he came to Lehi, the Philistines shouted against him. And the Spirit of Yahweh came mightily upon him, and the cords that were upon his arms became as flax that was burnt with fire. And his bands were loosed from off his hands. And he found a new jawbone of a donkey, and put forth his hand and took it, and slew 1,000 men therewith. And Samson said, Because the jawbone of a donkey heaps upon heaps, with the jawbone of a donkey, heaps upon heaps, with the jaw of a donkey, have I slain 1,000 men. And it came to pass, when he made an end of speaking, that he cast away the jawbone out of his hand, and called the place Ramath Lehi. Continuing verse 18. And he was very thirsty, and called on Yahweh, and said, You have given this great deliverance into the hands of your servant. And now shall I die for thirst, and fall into the hand of the uncircumcised? But God spoke, Open a hollow place that was in the jaw. God broke open a hollow place that was in the jaw. And there came water there out, and he had drunk. And when he had drunk, his spirit came again, and he revived. Therefore he called the name Enhakkore, which is in Lehi to this day. And he judged Israel's in the days of the Philistines for 20 years. Judges chapter 16. Then went Samson to Gaza, and saw there a harlot, and went in unto her. Okay. Then it was told to the Gazites, saying, Samson has come here, and they encircled him in, and laid wait for him all night in the gate of the city, and were quiet all the night, saying, In the morning, when it is day, we shall kill him. And Samson lay there till midnight, and arose at midnight, and took the doors of the gate of the city, and the 2 posts, and went away with them, bar and all, and put them on his shoulders, and carried them to the top of the hill that is before Hebron. And it came to pass afterward that he loved a woman in the valley of Sorek, whose name was Delilah. Okay. And the lords of the Philistines came up to her and said to her, Entice him, and see wherein his great strength lies, and by what means we may prevail against him, that we may bind him to afflict him. And we will give you every one of us 1,100 pieces of silver. And Delilah said to Samson, Tell me, I pray you, wherein your great strength lies, and with what you might be bound to afflict you. And Samson said to her, If they bind me with 7 green cords that were never dried, then shall I be weak and be as another man. Then the lords of the Philistines brought up to her 7 green cords which had not been dried, and she bound him with them. Now there were men lying in wait, staying with her in the chamber, and she said to him, The Philistines are upon you, Samson. And he broke the cords, as a thread of flax is broken when it touches the fire, so his strength was not known. And Delilah said to Samson, Behold, you have mocked me and told me lies. Now tell me, I pray you, with what you might be bound. And he said to her, If they bind me fast with new ropes that never were occupied, then shall I be weak and be as another man. Delilah therefore took new ropes and bound him therewith, and said to him, The Philistines are upon you, Samson. And there were liers in wait staying in the chamber, and he broke them from off his arms like a thread. And Delilah said to him, Till now you have mocked me and told me lies. Tell me with what you might be bound. And he said to her, If you weave the 7 locks of my head with the web. And she fastened it with a pin, and said to him, The Philistines are upon you, Samson. And he awoke out of his sleep and went away with the pin of the beam and with the web. And she said to him, How can you say, I love you, when your heart is not with me? You have mocked me these 3 times, and have not told me wherein your great strength lies. And it came to pass, when she pressed him daily with her words and urged him, so that his soul was grieved unto death, that he told her all his heart, and said to her, There has not come a razor upon my head, for I have been a Nazarite unto God from my mother's womb. If I am shaven, then my strength will go from me, and I shall become weak and be like any other man. And when Delilah saw that he had told her all his heart, she sent and called for the lords of the Philistines, saying, Come up this once, for he has shown me all his heart. Then the lords of the Philistines came up to her, and brought money in their hand, and she made him sleep upon her knees. And she called for a man, and she caused him to shave off the 7 locks of his head, from his head. And she began to afflict him, and his strength went from him. And she said, The Philistines are upon you, Samson. And he awoke out of his sleep and said, I will go out as other times before and shake myself. And he knew not that Yahweh had departed from him. But the Philistines took him and put out his eyes and brought him down to Gaza and bound him with fetters of brass. And he did grind in the prison house. However, the hair of his head began to grow after he was shaven. Then the lords of the Philistines gathered them together to offer a great sacrifice to Dagon, their god, the fish god. You know, that hat the Pope used to wear with the eyes on it? They took the eyes out of it so you wouldn't realize their god's Dagon. great sacrifice to Dagon. By the way, that hat also was similar to the hat the pharaohs wore that hid the elongated brains of those other creatures that ruled over them back then. Another species. To offer a great sacrifice to Dagon their god, and to rejoice, for they said, our God has delivered Samson, our enemy, into our hands. And when the people saw him, they praised their God, for they said, our God has delivered into our hands our enemy, and the destroyer of our country, which slew many of us. And it came to pass, when their hearts were merry, that they said, call for Samson, that he may make us sport. And they called for Samson out of the prison house, and he made them laugh. And they set him between the pillars. And Samson said to the lad that held him by the hand, allow me that I may feel the pillars whereupon the house stands, that I may lean upon them. Now the house was full of men and women, and all the lords of the Philistines were there. And there were upon the roof about 3,000 men and women that watched while Samson made sport. And Samson called to Yahweh and said, O Lord Yahweh, remember me, I pray you, and strengthen me, I pray you. Only this once, O God, that I may be at once avenged of the Philistines for my 2 eyes. And Samson took hold of the 2 middle pillars upon which the house stood, and on which it was borne up, of the one with his right hand, and of the other with his left. And Samson said, let me die with the Philistines. And he bowed himself with all his might, and the house fell upon the lords and upon all the people that were therein. So the dead which he slew at his death were more than they which he slew in his life. Then his brethren and all the house of his father came down and took him, and brought him up, and buried him between Zorah and Eshtaol, in the burying place of Manoah his father. And he judged Israel for 20 years. So, Samson, this is probably one of the greatest known stories in the Bible. Maybe even better known than Noah's flood. Noah's flood takes up, I think it was like 6 pages, 8 pages, at least 6 pages of the Bible text. It is actually longer than the creation. It's longer than the creation of Adam. It's one of the longest things in the Bible. I want you to keep in mind, that was 6,000 years ago, half of an earth age ago. And we argue today. We argue among ourselves, and this is one of those arguments that's okay to have. Some of us argue, reading the text of the Bible, it was worldwide. Others of us argue, no, it was a local flood covering just the Timrim Basin. It's divided about equally. It's not that big of a deal. Even pastors can disagree with one another on this. Dan Gaiman had what he called the water closet. It was all the books on the flood of Noah, proving that it was worldwide. He was firmly in the camp that it was a worldwide flood. And Pastor Jerry Wicke said, no, it was obviously a local flood. So the two disagreed on it. It's okay to disagree on things. That's pretty much okay. There's other things that are more important. Yet we disagree on those things too. We will eventually know the truth. If you go to my blog, Giving Psychology Away, there's something waiting you there that's for free. It was in the public domain. I found it on another website, better organized than the layout I could give with my high-speed printer. It would have been awkward to have taken the booklet apart and scanned it. But I took the booklet apart anyway, and I scanned the maps that were contained in the middle. And in the maps, there is a argument, a proof, if you will, and it shows you the Timurin Basin. It shows you where the flood was. Yeah, I leaned in that camp. For most of my life, I leaned in the first camp because that's what they told me when I was a little boy in Sunday school. But we have to break with all those things they taught us that weren't true in Sunday school. Because the Bible says very clearly, love truth and justice. It's not a suggestion, it's a command. And so we have to go after the truth. We can't just make true that which is not true. That happens in our society all the time. Thereby, there's no justice. I would like to see the list of clients for Jeffrey Epstein. Why has that never been made public? It has to be made public. Why was the murder of Jeffrey Epstein covered up, ruled a suicide by the highest officer in the land for law enforcement, the Attorney General of the United States, Bill Barr, went against the ruling of the initial examiner of the body who said he was murdered? He was strangled with the electrical cord to his CPAP machine. And Bill Barr says he suicided himself. Based upon what evidence? And Bill Barr remains uncharged. He needs to be charged. If I was president, I would be ordering the inquest into that stuff. We'd give it to a real grand jury, give it to a group of 50, and have them vote on it. I'd pretty much dictate the man be brought to trial. I don't want him acquitted either, and I don't want him walking. I don't want him getting probation. He needs to be made a felon. He needs to be stripped of any and all rights. All of them, forever. Stripped of citizenship, a proper citizenship. I wish we had the time of judges in America today. I wish we had great judges that would come up inspired by Yahweh, protected by Yahweh, acting as Yahweh directs them. I don't think we're going to get those days, but it's just kind of a wish of mine. It's probably not going to happen because we have systemic corruption. You know, they claim there's systemic racism, and there is. But it's not systemic racism against blacks. It's systemic racism against whites. You are required by federal law to discriminate against white men. That's the way the law is written. It's written so that none of the other people with the other characteristics can discriminate. By definition of the law, they are powerless and thus cannot discriminate against white men. Nothing they do against a white man can be misconstrued as a hate crime. Whatever they do is A-OK. They get the full blessing. I think that's what we would call black privilege, to be honest with you. And police officers today do not kill black gentlemen more often than white gentlemen. As a matter of fact, when you base it upon the rate of incidents, not the rate for the population, but the rate of incidents, you will find that white men are destroyed by police 3 times more readily than black gentlemen are. Yes, an occasional black gentleman gets killed by the police, murdered by the police, but more white men, 3-fold more. And so police officers are more willing to unload their guns upon us white guys because we're not worth as much as a black man. That's all there is to it. Look at the behavior. The behavior of the society is, if you're white, you're valueless, you're worthless. If you're black, you're valuable. We're going to protect you. It's going to cost them more to take your life. You're going to have to be consecrated at a much larger amount, much higher amount. That's black privilege today. You want to go to a college or university, you're black, you're in automatically. It's actually changing now. Why is it changing? Because a lot of the blacks that were let in on affirmative action were failing, and they didn't think that was very fair to them. Look, folks, if I was president, I would say no more affirmative action. None. Not only that, I'd make it illegal for them to collect characteristics for people in job applications or in jobs. I mean, I would create a perfectly level playing field, which means the government stays out of it. You hire who you want. Who is the best of the job, the best for your business? It is your business. It is your property. Do you not own it? If you have no property rights, then I understand. You've got universal communism here, or fascism, or whatever you want to call it. But I would require that there be no more non-government organizations, no more non-profit organizations. You would say, well, you can't do that. How can you do that? Oh, it's real easy. Once the IRS is gone, you don't have any more of those preferential treatments because you're holier than thou because you're a non-profit. Like all the hospitals are non-profit. Non-profit, my ass. That's all they exist for, is enriching their physicians. The founders would never have tolerated taxing a man's daily wages. It's immoral. So that needs, and it was never voted on even. So it really wasn't ratified properly. It is not the law of the land. So it needs to go away. However, I would return to George Washington's 30% tariffs and duties at our borders. And I know you're going to scream because you want cheap stuff. And I would look at you and say, do you not want your neighbor to prosper? If your neighbor's got money, they can do business with you. They can afford your services. Do you not want to strengthen your neighbor so that he can buy your goods, purchase the service you provide? Come on, folks. I can't quite say that like Joe does, can I? Come on, man. We had a burgeoning middle class because of George Washington's wisdom and the blessing he gave us. We had that until the institution of a graduated communist tax. And all the rights and privileges that go with that for the ruling class with their attorneys and their CPAs. I think we need to level the playing field so everybody's on the same level ground. No preferential treatment. I don't care what your gender is, no preferential treatment. I don't care how rare you are. Everybody is an individual. Everybody is a unique species unto themselves. And you'll say, well, you can't say that. That's racist. Well, so tell me, how much Denison DNA do you have in you? How much Cro-Magnon? How much Dragon Man? Yes, that was a species. How much of these other species that predate us do you have in you? You don't know. And whatever it is unique unto you. We shouldn't waste our time measuring it, trying to measure it. There might be usefulness in doing that. I don't know. Maybe scientifically, maybe in some of the advanced medical technologies yet to be discovered, we might find that useful. But right now, all it does is divide us and allow the predators to conquer us. The predatory classes, the professions predate upon the laity. Yeah, I was a member of that. I had a license. Remember, license comes from licentiousness. It means you are given a permission slip to break the law, given a license to sin. And when you people in Europe, when you travel to Europe and you go in those beautiful cathedrals and marvel at the details and how much labor, how much wealth it took, how much commitment it took to build those marvelous cathedrals, I want you to keep in mind that you're looking at the sin of Europe. Yeah, the Roman Catholic Church with their indulgences produced that. You wanted to go commit a sin? You went to the priest first and you bought yourself an indulgence. I want to go cheat on my wife. What's the fee? And you paid into the kitty and you had the permission from the Pope, from the church, to go do the sin. You were given a license. Licentiousness. Oh, folks, that's it for today for Awakening Israel. I hope you get something out of it. Do me a favor, buy one of the Bibles on the way out, like this video, subscribe, get this out there, because I do think that if we can establish a Bible reading presence in this nation, a group of people that love the truth, then maybe we can get justice too. We're not going to get justice without striving and digging for the truth. We need to love the truth. Then we can get justice. We need to love truth and justice in that order. That's one of the big commands out of the Bible. So, there's great wisdom in this book. If you want to pray for me, that's acceptable. Just make sure you use the name Yahweh and use the name Yahshua. Yah is the nickname for each one, which is also the word yes in German. German means genuine. Do you know why we went after the German people in World War I and World War II? It's because they were to hold the scepter, the power, until the return of the Messiah. And every time Il Papa, whatever, the Pope, whatever, anytime he wanted to get a warrior, he always got a kraut. I'm always going to say it that way. I rather like the German people, so please don't consider it a racial slur. The land of sauerkraut, beer. Munich. Oktoberfest. 30% of the German language is from Hebrew. Yeah. And the Jews that were in Germany loved being German. They loved Germany. And so the bad ones went against the good ones. And that's what we saw happening there. In World War II, that's when the good Jews and the bad Jews vied to represent the Jews at large with Adolf Hitler. If you want to read the book about it, it's called The Transfer Agreement, written by Edwin Black, himself Jewish. Both of his parents were upset when they found out he was going to write this book. They didn't want him to write it. He had saved up $5,000. It was his life savings, and he used that to fund his book. It's a book worth reading. There are also videos of Edwin Black on YouTube, and so you can see the man for yourself and get a general feeling about him. He's somewhat remarkable, but I would prefer you go to the videos and witness for yourself. There's some characteristics about him which might be disabilities for all I know, but he did a good job. He did real research. That was before we had the mainstream media with all of its propaganda and all the lies that go on today. Before we had Hollywood running things too. He did a good job, and if you read the book and read between the lines, you'll realize that the bad ones won out, and they got the rights and privilege to represent the Jews at large. And the bad ones, what makes them bad? You read the book and you'll understand why. And the good ones, you'll understand why I call them the good ones. They were the victims. They were the ones getting their asses murdered. And Hitler, Adolf Hitler, may rightly be considered and called the father of modern Israel. Let that one sink in for a bit. I think you need to be able to banter that little thing, that little factoid around, so people will realize and wake up and realize that we've been lied to. We've been had. We've been deceived. We are ruled over by a bunch of sociopaths, by murderers and thieves. They've institutionalized that. There's a going rate to get a guy murdered today. It's been a going rate for quite a while. I met one of the guys about less than 10 years ago, about 8 years ago maybe. He complained to me because back when he was at the job, he was only getting paid $5,000 a hit. Today they get $50,000. Well, that was at that time. People open up and they tell me their life stories, and I'm just like amazed. Oh, Lord, thank you for letting me live in grace and relative peace most of my life. I do have some anguish today. Please make America good again. Please restore our republic. You can do it. Yahweh, you can make this happen. Restore us once again to your glory. You're the only one that can make us good. We can't do it for ourselves, Lord. Yahweh bless the republic once again.